During a routine pressure test of the phase watcher system, employees pressured the system with water to 2,500 psi. At that point, the employees noticed that the pressure seal was leaking water. This meant that the barium source holder had potentially been exposed to pressures beyond its pressure rating. The employees immediately shut down the pressure test and bled down the pressure to 0 psi. This is where the operation should have stopped and a call to the emergency hotline made. Instead, the employees loaded the device onto a forklift and moved it to another building. The barium source was removed from the phase watcher system, placed in a storage box, and locked in the storage area. The employees then surveyed the phase watcher and discovered residual radiation, an indication that the source may have been ruptured. One of the employees notified his manager, who then called the emergency hotline. Mission accomplished, or so they thought. One of the employees left for home, stopping to change out of his coveralls on the way out. The other employee sat down to have a sandwich while he waited for further instructions. The Schlumberger emergency response team phoned with instructions. First, the employee was instructed to survey his hands with a survey meter. He realized he had several areas of contamination on his hands. After a series of 4 scrubbings with an abrasive soap and a brush, no further contamination remained. Over the next several days, the 2 employees who were involved in this incident underwent medical evaluation to determine whether they had ingested any radioactive material. Even small amounts of radioactive material, if ingested, can cause serious health effects. Fortunately, the amount of material ingested by both employees was extremely small, so small that no concerns for their health existed. After the callback from emergency response, the employees had instructions to close the pressure test area and mark it as potentially contaminated. The building where the phase watcher had been moved was also closed. The phase watcher skid was cordoned off to limit access to the area. Schlumberger contracted a third-party company to assess the base for contamination and decontaminate as needed. The team's survey of the entire area revealed contamination in the pressure wash area, along the route the forklift driver took to move the phase watcher to the second building, and in the second building. There was no contamination in the offices where the affected employees worked, in the galley, restrooms, or in other common areas, so these areas were reopened for general use. The third-party company began decontamination of the pressure test area. They collected samples from the wash bay sumps, which had been isolated after the discovery of the possible source rupture. All of the water from each of the sumps was collected and transferred to drums for shipment to a disposal site. Using a radiation detector, the team was able to follow the path that the forklift driver had taken as the water leaked from the skid pan. This path was marked and scrubbed with abrasive detergent. The decontamination team gave the concrete areas a second cleaning with muriatic acid. The team then collected and disposed of all cleaning materials in barrels designed for radioactive waste disposal. Further investigation found that the phase watcher skid was highly contaminated in some areas. So the entire phase watcher unit was wrapped in plastic sheeting and placed in a metal Sealand container for transport to a decontamination facility. The source and all residues have since been sent to a disposal site. After a full investigation of the incident, the phase watcher pressure test procedure was modified. So what can we learn from this incident that occurred during a routine activity? First, the operation should have been stopped once the employees suspected that the integrity of the source had been compromised. The call to the emergency hotline number should have been made at that time. Any time you work with radioactive materials, use personal protective equipment. Simply wearing gloves would have prevented the contamination to the employee's hands. Do not eat, drink, or smoke during a procedure involving a radioactive source. This lessens that chance of any internal contamination should a source be leaking or become ruptured. And never move a source that you suspect may be ruptured or leaking. So when you are working with radioactive materials, if you have reason to suspect a source is leaking, assess the situation, and if needed, implement emergency response procedures. Assess, don't guess.